Through the Capitol, everybody's screaming, everyone's crying. So what's the occasion? Well, Congresswoman Omar got voted off the Foreign Affairs Committee.
The question is on adoption of the resolution. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those in favor say no. No. It's the opinion of the chair that the ayes have it and the resolution is agreed to, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table.
Does that remind you of anything? McCarthy yanked Omar off Foreign Affairs to pay back Pelosi for yanking his people off committees.
Omar laughed that Americans speak of al-Qaeda in a menacing tone and remarked that you don't say America with this intensity. You say al-Qaeda makes you proud. Al-Qaeda makes you proud. You don't speak that way about America. And at a press conference just this week, when asked whether she supported al-Qaeda, that's our enemy. That's our enemy. They are a very serious problem that we take care of, but they always seem to come along somewhere. She refused to answer. She didn't want to give an answer to that question. Omar blamed the United States for the crisis in Venezuela. I mean, think of that one. And she looks down with contempt on the hard-working Americans, saying that ignorance is pervasive in many parts of this country. And obviously and importantly, Omar has a history of launching vicious anti-Semitic screeds.
Committees. He didn't want to do it, doesn't think it's right, but he had to do it. You can't let Democrats boot your boys off committees and turn the other cheek. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. Let's just not let it happen again. Swalwell and Schiff got the boot from Intel because they're liars, leakers, and Chinese spy sleepers. And Elon got axed because of anti-Semitism. She called Israel evil and said, you know, Jews, it's all about the money. But Omar says she loves Jews, and she had no idea there was a thing with Jews and money.
I certainly did not or was not aware that the word hypnotize was a trope. I wasn't aware of the fact that there are tropes about Jews and money. That has been a very enlightening part of this journey.
Number two, frankly, I don't know why the president felt the need to tweet on this subject at all. You know, when you argue with a fool, you just prove there are two. And I consider Congresswoman Omar, Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez, Congresswoman Tlaib, Congresswoman Presley, I think is her name. They call themselves the Squad. I consider them to be fools.
I think Adam Schiff's Jewish. He's looking at her like, that's like me telling dumb blonde jokes and Dana getting upset. And I say, Dana, I never knew people tease blondes about their brains. Even I couldn't play that dumb. And it's easy for me. So 2 white guys got stripped and then a Muslim woman. So how does AOC see it? Omar was fired because of 9/11.
As a fellow New Yorker, I think one of the things that we should talk about here is also one of the disgusting legacies after 9/11 has been the targeting and racism against Muslim Americans throughout the United States of America. And this is an extension of that legacy.
Whoa! So some people did some things to Omar, and that's racist. And if the race
founded after 9/11 because they recognized that some people did something and that all of us were starting to lose access to our civil liberties.
And if the racist Republicans don't shut up, the Squad is going to die.
consistency. There is nothing consistent with the Republican Party's continued attack except for the racism and incitement of violence against women of color in this body. I had a member of the Republican caucus threaten my life, and you all and the Republican caucus rewarded him with one of the most prestigious committee assignments in this Congress. This is about targeting women of color in the United States of America. Don't tell me, because I didn't get a single apology when my life was threatened. Thank you.
I'm in a town where we have a lot of people who are refugees who have come, some from Somalia, some from Bosnia. I've never heard one of them say that America's a terrible place or be unappreciative of our country. Most of them are thankful. I've met people who've come here from behind the Iron Curtain that got away from communism. They're some of the best Americans we have because they really appreciate how great our country is. And then I hear Representative Omar say, "Oh, America's a terrible place. I thought there'd be justice, and there's no justice here." And it's like, well, she came here and we fed her, we clothed her, she got welfare, she got school, she got health care, and then lo and behold, she has the honor of actually winning a seat in Congress, and she says we're a terrible country. I think that's about as ungrateful as you can get. And so while I'm not saying we forcibly send her anywhere, I'm willing to contribute to buy her a ticket to go visit Somalia. And I think she could look and maybe learn a little bit about the disaster that is Somalia, that has no capitalism, has no God-given rights guaranteed in a constitution, and has about 7 different tribes that have been fighting each other for the last 40 years. And then maybe after she's visited Somalia for a while, she might come back and
Whoa! I haven't seen AOC that angry since somebody called her a big booty Latina.
See this guy right there? Right there. When I was walking up, he said, "Hey," right in front of a Capitol Police officer, said, "Hey, here's this, look at that big ass, look at that big juicy booty, this Latina," like whatever, all the bunch of racist, sexist stuff.
This was only the beginning. Apparently, Omar losing a committee seat was worse than January 6th.
Republicans are waging a blatantly Islamophobic and racist attack on Congresswoman Omar. And I've said it before, I will say it again. The white supremacy happening is unbelievable. This is despicable. This is just a bunch of racist gaslighting.
Could it be the way that she looks?
Time is expired.
Could it be her religious practices? This clearly isn't about what Ilhan Omar said as much as who she is. Being a smart, outspoken black woman of a Muslim faith is apparently the issue.
The GOP is now doing what it is best at, weaponizing hate against a black, beautiful Muslim woman. They turn Congress into a place of fear-mongering hate. It is so painful to watch.
The racism was so strong, it brought the squad to tears.
You are showing who you all are, really.
The gentlewoman's time has expired.
Omar will not be silenced.
The gentlewoman's time has expired.
Congressman Omar, I am so sorry that our country is failing you today through this chamber. You belong
The gentlewoman is no longer
You belong in that committee. Have you ever seen Democrats cry for their constituents who get shot? Have you ever seen Democrats cry when the cartels poison our people? People are getting pushed into subway tracks, but this gets Democrats upset. You get fired and they don't bat an eye, but the squad gets fired and they cry. This tells you everything you need to know about these people. It's all about them. It's not about you. It's about their power, their perks, their places on committee. Where was that emotion when the terrorists were blowing up our Marines in Afghanistan? Or when moms were scrambling for baby formula? Well, Omar closed out the show, and I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I'm just going to guess that Omar reminded us that she's a Muslim immigrant from Africa.
Well, I am Muslim. I am an immigrant, and interestingly, from Africa. Is anyone surprised that I am being targeted? Is anyone surprised that I am somehow deemed unworthy to speak about American foreign policy? Or that they see me as a powerful voice that needs to be silenced?
Omar is not just a congresswoman. She tells us she is a global citizen and people around the world celebrate her accomplishments. We don't know what those accomplishments are, but if you listen closely, the world is clapping.
My leadership and voice will not be diminished if I am not on this committee for one term.
The removal of Representative Ilhan Omar from the Foreign Affairs Committee ignited a firestorm in Washington. What should have been a procedural dispute devolved into a display of high-stakes emotional theater. This shift from objective accountability to performative outrage suggests that in the modern capital, the optics of confrontation often outweigh the substance of the debate itself. At the core of this conflict is a cycle of political retaliation with no end in sight. House leadership framed the move as a necessary response to past precedents. This I4NI strategy highlights a breakdown in institutional norms. Committee assignments are no longer based on expertise or seniority, but are instead used as tactical weapons to punish ideological opponents and satisfy party bases. Justifications for Omar's removal center on a history of controversial statements regarding American foreign policy. Critics point to rhetoric they argue undermines national interests. When confronted with these past remarks, the defense often pivots away from the specific content of the speech and toward the identity of the speaker, framing the action as an attack on marginalized groups rather than a critique of policy. We saw this play out vividly on the House floor, where the tone shifted from legislative business to raw emotion. For many observers, the intensity of the reaction seemed disproportionate to the loss of a single committee assignment. This raises a fundamental question: when did political setbacks begin to be treated with the gravity of national tragedies? The focus on personal pain suggests a shift toward a therapeutic form of governance. The defense offered by the squad emphasized a legacy of targeting and racism, connecting the vote to broader societal tensions. By framing the removal as an extension of systemic bigotry, they effectively shielded specific statements from scrutiny. This tactic narrows the room for civil disagreement, implying that any opposition to a representative's conduct is rooted in prejudice rather than legitimate ethical judgment. Opponents argue that her rhetoric reflects an underlying skepticism toward American values. They suggest that a seat on a sensitive committee requires a level of diplomatic tact that her public record calls into question. This perspective views her removal not as an act of hate, but as a functional necessity to maintain the integrity of a committee tasked with representing the nation on the world stage. As the debate raged, accusations of white supremacy and racist gaslighting flew across the aisle. This hypercharged language polarizes the electorate and obscures the actual legislative record. When every disagreement is elevated to the level of an existential threat, the possibility for reasoned compromise or even basic professional courtesy within the halls of Congress begins to vanish entirely. The incident highlights a divide in how Americans view gratitude and national identity. Some argue that the opportunities afforded by the American system should command respect for its institutions. Others contend that the right to criticize those institutions is the highest expression of the American project. This tension fuels every subsequent clash between the establishment and the progressive wing of the legislature. Ultimately, this controversy is a symptom of a Washington that prefers the viral moment over the work of governing. By prioritizing explosive confrontations, political actors ensure high engagement but contribute little to resolving the nation's problems. The focus remains on how people felt, while what was said and why it matters are lost in the noise of a shouting match that serves no one. True political accountability requires a commitment to logic and a willingness to examine statements on their own merits. When we allow leaders to substitute tears for transparency and accusations for arguments, we lose the ability to maintain a functioning representative body. This spectacle was not just a fight over a committee seat. It was a demonstration of how far our civil discourse has drifted from its rational moorings. As we move forward, the challenge is to look past the manufactured intensity of these political performances. We must demand a return to a style of commentary that values reason over rhetoric and liberty over tribalism. Only by rejecting the lure of the emotional shutdown can we restore a sense of purpose to the national conversation. The future of our political system depends on our ability to focus on the principles that sustain a free society.